Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media, and today I am at Edgeworx, where I'm joined by Kilton Hopkins, who is the CEO of the company. Kilton, thank you for taking time to meet with us today.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
So when we start talking about things like autonomous vehicles and edge computing and things like that, one of the most important considerations, it's not just these, but it's security. It's a huge topic today, but as you start to really make computing more ubiquitous, it becomes increasingly important. Can you talk about how Edgeworx is helping the world overcome these security challenges, particularly as it relates to the role edge computing is going to play in our futures?
Sure. Yeah, and right before I describe that, let me also describe why we are in a different security environment. Up until now, when you run applications, they're running on computers that people don't have access to. So if your online banking was running on servers that someone could walk up and screw around with, your secure information would be in danger. But they're not. They're running in a data center behind walls and behind fences and so on. Now here comes the edge. And your computers are in the trunk of a vehicle, or it's underneath the seat of a city bus, or it's at a parking meter. And these things are accessible. Mm-hmm. So now we need to think about security at the edge differently, because you can actually walk up and interface with the hardware itself.
Yeah,
very different world.
That's been one of the, I mean, coming from an IT background, it was always physical security was a separate thing. And it can't be anymore.
Yeah, that's right. It's all one and the same. So now how do we handle this really crazy world, right, in which everything's been spread out? Well, normally, by putting extra hardware out there that has your software running, you're dramatically increasing your attack surface. But with Edgeworx, you're actually dramatically increasing your defense surface. So how is it that we provide some extra security at the edge? Well, each of the edge compute nodes, when it's running Edgeworx, is part of a secure software network. It's like a software mesh network that runs all over the globe if you have a whole bunch of nodes. And each of them plays a role in defending each other. And so people talk about hardware root of trust as being a really good way to address some of the security concerns around deploying sensors and things like that. Well, that's just the beginning. So with Edgeworx, we take the hardware root of trust, and then each of the layers above it, things like firmware or the BIOS, the secure boot of the operating system, and then the trusted software that's supposed to be running. Then we start to sprinkle in our own special sauce, which is like secure edge applications or edge microservices. And these things are all mashed together, and what this forms is, this forms the expected signature of what should be running on what hardware at the edge. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that looks a little bit out of bounds, one of the other edge nodes that's participating in the software network catches it. So this means that if you're in offline mode, you're not open to be hacked until you get online, which is how it is with cloud security, right? It's when you reconnect to the cloud, they might smell the trouble, mm-hmm. but it's already damage has been done. With us, as soon as it happens, the very next hop says, this doesn't look right to me, and quarantines.
Yeah, it's almost like automated compartmentalization in some ways. You're doing it on the fly when you start seeing something that's amiss.
Yeah, and it's somewhat akin to like decentralized leadership. So think about if you deploy a couple of squads on a mission and one of them has a big problem, you want them to handle it within the squad. They mm-hmm. shouldn't have to report home to base to say, well, this guy's a traitor, right? Just handle it right there.
Right.
Yep.
That's a really great analogy, and you don't want it, because otherwise you add latency to the equation, and that can lead to further intrusion.
Yeah.
That we can't really accept, especially when we start looking at some of the applications behind mm-hmm. edge computing.
That's right, yeah.
But it goes beyond just that kind of security. When we think about things like autonomous vehicles, there's other ways that bad actors can try to make these sorts of devices, for lack of a better phrase, do things they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
And how do we protect ourselves against some of those sorts of things?
Yeah, well, the first thing is you need to be running real software at the edge. And what I mean by that is, if you take all of the data from a sensor and you stream it to the cloud, then someone can already be fooling that sensor with, let's say, if you want to trigger a flood inside a building, all you have to do is trick the temperature sensor that something seems out of control, maybe there's a fire and it might trigger the sprinklers, and there you go, you've ruined your competitor's data, mm-hmm. right, and all of their papers and everything in the office. To prevent that, you need to be running software right there that says, this seems anomalous to me, and I don't think I'm going to trigger the sprinklers yet. How would you do that? You can't do it with all of the intelligence being centralized. You instead would want to be running the software that controls and evaluates the system right there in the room. So with real edge software, let's take the situation with autonomous vehicles and being able to put something like a specially made sign that looks like one thing and tricks the vehicle into doing the other, right? So when the vehicle learns that there's not really a threat, it should be able to also pass that information to all of the other vehicles. So in other words, it should learn and it should be able to adapt, and then the security model should be enhanced for everybody. But that would involve being able to spread the edge applications around, which is not also something you can do if you keep the data in the vehicle and don't connect it. So it's not just about keeping stuff at the edge, it's also about allowing it to work together. So with our edge application platform, you think, if the real software running at the edge is able to provide security by doing a little bit more intelligence there, and it discovers an anomaly, maybe it should even warn the others. And all of this is possible if they're all stitched together to make a large edge application framework.
This might be a little off topic, but it's something that jumped to mind. Are there committees or standards bodies that have been formed to start looking at how we do the data sharing between different platforms on the edge in a way that helps improve the security of everybody? Like almost a rising tide lifts all ships. So when one device on this platform sees an anomaly, they can tell all the devices on all the other platforms, hey, watch out for this.
Unfortunately, there are some efforts starting to bubble up, but we are far from there yet. So as usual, you have a whole bunch of different standards attempting bodies, and that's the usual players, the IEEE, they do good work. It takes them a little while, but they get it right. And then you have like things like the Open Fog Consortium and so on. And the recommendations are being made to look into it, but we're far from having identified anything that is a universal approach. And so what we like to say at Edgeworx is turn what would be kind of a standards problem into a common software problem. So why not deploy software today that solves it? And if it becomes a standard, great. And if not, then you can adopt the standard tomorrow. Don't deploy any new infrastructure.
Very good. Yeah. Kilton, thank you so much for this discussion. This was great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you to our audience for watching this Roadcast video.